was 16 years old when my parents bought what they liked to call their forever home. It was in a small Ohio town, one of those quiet suburbs where every house looks freshly painted, every lawn perfectly trimmed, and the most excitement you'll hear about is a high school football game or a summer block party. The house itself was beautiful, at least by my parents' standards. It had 2 floors, 4 bedrooms, a spacious backyard, and what my dad was most excited about, a 2-car garage. For me, the house felt foreign. It was too neat, too polished. I had grown up in a smaller, creaky old home where I knew every corner and sound. In this new place, every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the appliances, every draft at night felt unfamiliar. It made it hard to relax. But my parents were thrilled, and I didn't want to ruin that for them. So I tried to adjust. We moved in on a Monday. By Friday, most of our things were unpacked. That same Friday night, my parents told me they were heading to visit my aunt and uncle 2 hours away and that they'd be gone the whole weekend. They asked if I wanted to come. I told them no. I was looking forward to some time alone, to eat junk food, watch movies, and game late into the night without being nagged. It felt like a rite of passage, being trusted to take care of the house by myself. They gave me the usual reminders. Keep the doors locked, don't let anyone in, call if anything seems off. I promised I'd be fine. Friday night went smoothly. I stayed up until about 2 a.m., playing Xbox in the living room, stuffing my face with Doritos, and drinking way too much soda. The house was quiet except for the occasional hum of the fridge. At one point I thought I heard footsteps upstairs, but I chalked it up to the house settling. This was my first night alone in a brand new place. I knew my mind would play tricks on me. Eventually, I fell asleep on the couch with the controller still in my hand. Nothing happened. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the blinds. I actually laughed at myself for being nervous the night before. That night, though, everything changed. It was Saturday night, close to midnight again. I was on the couch under a blanket, watching a random horror movie on Netflix. My phone buzzed every few minutes with group texts from my friends. My parents had called earlier to check in, and everything was normal. Then I heard it, a low, mechanical rumble. At first I barely registered it, but after a second, I froze. It was the garage door. Our garage door wasn't subtle. It was old and made this heavy, grinding noise when it moved. I'd heard it enough times in the past week to recognize it instantly. And here's the thing, there was no way it should have been opening. My dad had taken the opener remote with him, and the keypad code was only known by my parents. Nobody else. Yet, the unmistakable sound of the garage door rising echoed through the quiet house. I muted the TV and sat there, every nerve in my body firing. The rumble stopped. For a few seconds there was silence. Then, the soft creak of the door from the garage into the hallway opening, followed by footsteps. I grabbed my phone so fast I almost dropped it. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. When the operator answered, I whispered, "Someone's in my house. Please, you have to send police." She told me to stay calm and stay on the line. I crouched behind the couch, holding the phone to my ear. My breathing was so loud I worried whoever was in the house would hear me. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. They didn't sound rushed or panicked or even cautious. It sounded like whoever it was knew exactly where they were going. The operator asked me if I could see the intruder. I said no, I was too scared to move. She told me officers were on their way and to stay hidden. I wanted to believe her, but the sound of those footsteps felt closer and closer. And then they stopped. The silence was almost worse than the footsteps. For maybe a full minute, I couldn't hear anything. I thought maybe the intruder had left, or maybe I had imagined it all. But then I heard it. A door creaking open upstairs, and then the sound of drawers sliding, things being shuffled around. My mom's bedroom. My blood turned cold. The 911 operator was still on the line, telling me again and again to stay hidden until the police arrived. But something inside me snapped. I thought about my mom's jewelry, her wedding ring, her photos, things that couldn't just be replaced. I thought about someone invading the one place that was supposed to be safe. And maybe it was just adrenaline, but I couldn't sit there anymore. I quietly set the phone down on the couch, grabbed the baseball bat I kept near the door, and started up the stairs. Every step felt like it echoed. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would give me away. When I reached the top, I saw light spilling out from under my mom's bedroom door. I tightened my grip on the bat, pushed the door open, and froze. There were two men. Both wore black hoodies and gloves. One was bent over the dresser, going through my mom's jewelry box. The other was holding one of my dad's watches in his hand. For half a second, none of us moved. Then the one near the dresser looked up, and our eyes locked. Before I could think, I swung the bat as hard as I could. It connected with his leg, and he screamed, collapsing to the floor. The second man dropped the watch and charged at me. He was taller, broader, faster. He ripped the bat out of my hands like I was a child, and before I could even react, he swung it sideways. It cracked against the side of my head. The world exploded in pain. I hit the floor, the room spinning, everything fading into black. The next thing I remember was voices. "Kid, stay with me. Can you hear me?" I opened my eyes to see two police officers kneeling over me. My head was pounding, my vision blurry. I mumbled, "Two men, upstairs in my mom's room." The officers exchanged a look and immediately started searching the house. I tried to sit up but collapsed again. One of the officers told me to stay still until paramedics arrived. When the police came back, their faces told me everything. They hadn't found anyone. The paramedics took me to the hospital. I needed stitches and had a mild concussion. When I was discharged the next morning, my parents were waiting, pale and shaken. Back at the house, the police explained what they had found, or rather what they hadn't. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no fingerprints, no stolen items. It was like the men had never been there at all. The only evidence was the mess in my mom's room and the blood on the floor where I'd been knocked out. Later, one of the officers pulled my parents aside. He told them our garage system was an older model, one that could be hacked by a universal remote. Someone could drive down a street, press buttons until they hit the right code, and just like that, the garage would open. It explained how they got in without breaking anything, but it didn't explain how they vanished so quickly, or why they left no trace. My parents were furious and terrified. Furious at me for going upstairs instead of hiding. Terrified because they realized how vulnerable we'd been. They installed a full security system the next week. Cameras, alarms, reinforced locks. But it didn't make me feel safer, because the truth was, those men had gotten in once. They could do it again. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every time the house settled, I jumped. Every time a car drove by at night, I froze. Even now, years later, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night convinced I hear the garage door opening, and I lie there in the dark, paralyzed, praying it's just my imagination. Because if it's not, I don't think I'll survive a second time. I never wanted to move in the first place. I was 17, a senior in high school, and my life had just started to feel steady where we lived in Pennsylvania. My parents, though, had other plans. My dad got promoted at his company, which meant more money, more opportunities, and a shiny new house in New Jersey. To them, it was exciting, a fresh start in a nice neighborhood. To me, it felt like being uprooted. One day I was hanging out with my friends. The next day I was unpacking boxes in a strange place, surrounded by neighbors I didn't know and streets that felt too quiet at night. Our new house was bigger than our old one. 2 stories, white siding, green shutters, a decent-sized backyard with a row of trees that led into a patch of woods. My mom loved it instantly, calling it charming and full of potential. I didn't see it that way. To me, it felt hollow, like a stage set waiting for something bad to happen. I had the bedroom at the back of the house on the 2nd floor, with a big window that overlooked the backyard and the trees beyond. At first, I liked it. It felt private, tucked away from the street. But after the first few nights, I started noticing just how dark those woods got. From my bed, I could see nothing but blackness outside my window. Sometimes I imagined eyes staring back at me from that darkness. It was a thought I tried to push away, until the night it became real. It happened 2 weeks after we moved in. My parents were invited to a dinner party by one of my dad's new coworkers. They were eager to go, hoping to make connections and settle into the neighborhood. I had no interest in sitting at a table listening to adults talk about work, so I stayed home. It was a Saturday night, the end of September. The air outside was cool, crisp enough to make the leaves rustle against the house. I remember microwaving ramen and sitting in the living room with my phone, scrolling through social media while the TV played in the background. The first couple hours were boring, uneventful. The neighborhood was unnervingly quiet. Most houses had their lights off by 10, and the only sound was the occasional car passing on the distant main road. I was just starting to doze off on the couch when I heard it. A tap. At first I thought it was nothing. Maybe the pipes, maybe the TV. I muted the sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was faint but distinct, and it was coming from upstairs, from my bedroom window. My first thought was that it had to be a branch brushing against the glass. That was logical. We had trees in the backyard, and the wind had been picking up. But when I went to check, I realized there weren't any branches long enough to reach that high. My window was at least 10 feet above the ground. I stood there in the hallway, listening. My chest was tight, but after a minute of silence, I convinced myself I was imagining it. New house, new sounds. That's all. I went back downstairs, turned the TV up louder, and tried to shake the feeling. About 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen, expecting it to be one of my old friends. Instead, it was a number I didn't recognize. The message said, "Why did you move into my house?" I froze. My first instinct was that it had to be a prank. Maybe one of my friends found my new number somehow and thought it'd be funny to mess with me, but no one outside my family even knew our new address yet. I didn't reply. I just sat there, staring at the words, my pulse thudding in my ears. And that's when I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. From upstairs. I stood up, clutching my phone. The TV flickered light across the living room, but the rest of the house felt swallowed in shadow. That's when I heard something else. Breathing. Slow, heavy breathing, coming from behind me. I turned toward the living room window. And that's when I saw him. A man's face pressed against the glass, inches away from me. His eyes were wide, unblinking. His grin stretched across his face, too wide, almost unnatural. His breath fogged up the glass as he stared straight at me. I screamed and stumbled back, dropping my phone on the carpet. By the time I scrambled to pick it up, the face was gone, vanished into the darkness outside. My hands shaking, I dialed 911. The operator answered, her calm voice a lifeline in that moment. "There's someone outside my house," I whispered, my throat dry. He was at the window. He was watching me. She told me to lock all the doors, stay on the line, and wait for officers. I moved through the house as quickly and quietly as I could, checking every lock, every window latch. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. That's when I heard the back door knob rattle. It wasn't subtle. Someone was testing it, twisting it, jiggling it as if trying to force it open. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "He's trying to get in. He's at the back door." The operator told me officers were on their way, but it felt like time had slowed. The rattling stopped. For a moment, the silence was almost worse. Then I heard the squeak of the kitchen window being pushed, the faint scrape of metal against glass. He was circling the house. I crouched in the hallway, my knees shaking, whispering updates into the phone. Now he's at the kitchen, now the side window. He's checking them one by one. It was methodical, deliberate, like he was studying the house, memorizing every weakness. Every creak of the floorboards above me made me flinch. Every shadow outside felt alive. At one point, I thought I saw movement on the porch. A dark figure pacing, shifting from one window to another. The operator's calm instructions barely registered over the pounding of my heart. And then came the loudest sound yet, a knock on the living room window. Not gentle, not tentative, hard. I looked up. He was there again. His face was pressed against the glass, his grin stretched wider than before. His hand was flat against the pane, as if he was daring me to open it. For a split second, our eyes locked. I screamed into the phone. "He's here! He's right here!" The operator told me officers were arriving. Red and blue lights washed over the street. The man's expression shifted. His grin vanished, replaced by a snarl. He turned and bolted, sprinting across the yard and disappearing into the line of trees at the back of the property. Two officers ran up the porch, weapons drawn. They swept the yard, the street, even the woods. But he was gone. What they did find left me shaking. In the damp dirt around the house, clear muddy footprints circled the property. They weren't random. The man had walked the entire perimeter, testing each window, each door, over and over again. And the scariest part? There were footprints directly beneath my bedroom window, the very spot where I'd first heard the tapping. My parents came home to find the police still there, me pale and shaking on the couch. They were horrified. My mom cried, hugging me like she was afraid I'd vanish. My dad was furious, not at me but at himself, for leaving me alone in a new place. The police took my statement, asked if I recognized the man. I didn't. I could only describe his grin, his eyes, the way he stared like he already knew me. They told us it was likely a drifter, maybe someone who had lived nearby once. They promised to patrol the area more often, but nothing ever came of it. He was never caught. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sent me jolting upright. Every gust of wind against the window made my heart pound. My parents installed cameras, motion sensor lights, even a fence. None of it made me feel safe, because the memory of his face was burned into me. That grin, those eyes, and the message. Why did you move into my house? I never told my parents about the text. I deleted it, terrified that somehow acknowledging it would make him come back. But late at night, when I was lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if he wasn't some random drifter? What if he really believed this was his house? It's been months since then, but sometimes I swear I still hear it. Tap, tap, tap against the glass of my bedroom window, and every time I'm too afraid to look because I know what I'll see. That grin. Waiting. When my parents first told me we were moving again, I thought it would be like the last 2 times. New town, new school, new house that smelled of fresh paint and looked like it came out of a catalog. But this house wasn't like that. It was old, over 100 years old, according to the realtor. The kind of place with slanted floors, squeaky stairs, and wallpaper that looked like it belonged in a history book. I remember walking through it for the first time. Dust motes floated in the air like tiny insects, and every room had that faint, musty smell of a place that had been empty too long. The realtor smiled and called it charming. My mom said it had character. I didn't say anything, but to me it felt heavy, like the walls had absorbed every moment of every person who had ever lived there. What stuck out the most, though, was the attic door. It was in the upstairs hallway, right across from my bedroom. Unlike the other doors, which were painted white with brass knobs, this one was plain wood, darker, older. The frame was slightly warped, and the door itself had deep scratches near the bottom, like someone had once tried to claw their way in or out. When I asked about it, the realtor just said, "It's an unfinished attic, nothing to see up there." But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than that. At first, things were fine. Moving boxes kept me busy, and I was too tired at night to care about the creaks and groans the house made as it settled. But by the 3rd night, I noticed something strange. I'd gone to bed around midnight, lying in my new room with the window cracked open. Just as I was drifting off, I heard a noise from the hallway, a soft creak. I sat up, heart thudding. It wasn't unusual for the house to make sounds, but this was different. It was deliberate, like the slow sound of a hinge. I opened my door and peeked out. The hallway was dark, but my eyes adjusted enough to see. The attic door was slightly open. I knew for a fact it had been closed earlier. I stood there frozen, staring at it. My first thought was that maybe my parents had gone up there. But they were asleep. I could hear my dad snoring from down the hall. I slowly closed the door until it latched shut again. My hands shook as I turned the knob to make sure it was tight. Then I hurried back to bed, pulling the blanket up to my chin. Over the next week, it kept happening. Every morning, I'd find the attic door cracked open, just a few inches. Every night, I made sure to close it tight. One night, I even pushed a chair up against it, just to see. At around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a faint scratching sound. It was coming from the hallway. I sat up in bed, straining to listen. The scratching grew louder, then stopped with a dull thud, like something bumping against wood. I got out of bed and opened my door just enough to peek. The chair I had pushed against the attic door had shifted. Not much, just a few inches, but enough that I knew it hadn't been my imagination. Something was trying to get out. I told my parents about it the next morning. They laughed it off. "It's an old house," my dad said, sipping his coffee. Air pressure, drafts, wood expanding. You're just not used to it yet. My mom added, "Sweetie, you've been stressed with the move. Don't let your imagination run wild." I wanted to believe them, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just the house. That night, I pushed the chair back against the door. I even stacked a couple boxes on top of it. But the next morning, the door was cracked open again. The chair had been moved aside. The boxes had toppled to the floor. No one in my family admitted to touching it. The real terror started the night my parents went out for dinner, leaving me home alone. It was around 9 p.m. I was in my room with headphones on, trying to drown out the eerie silence with music. Then I heard it, footsteps. Faint but unmistakable, above me. I pulled off my headphones and held my breath. There it was again, slow, deliberate footsteps pacing across the ceiling. My stomach dropped. The only thing above my room was the attic. I grabbed my phone and texted my mom. "Are you guys home?" "No, we just sat down at the restaurant." "Why?" I didn't reply. I just stared at the attic door across the hall, my heart hammering in my chest. The footsteps stopped. Then came the scratching again. Long, slow, deliberate scratches against the inside of the attic door. I called my parents. My mom picked up, laughing in the background. "There's someone in the attic," I whispered. Her laughter stopped. "What? Honey, calm down." "I'm not kidding. I hear them walking, scratching, the door's moving." "Call 911, she said immediately. I hung up and did exactly that. While the dispatcher kept me on the line, I sat on the floor of my room, staring at the attic door. That's when it happened. The doorknob turned, slowly, deliberately. The latch clicked, and the attic door creaked open. A hand appeared first, pale, bony, with dirt under the fingernails, then a face. A man, gaunt and hollow-eyed, peered down the hallway. His hair was greasy, his clothes torn. His lips curled into a faint smile when he saw me frozen in place. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The dispatcher's voice was a distant echo in my ear. The man stepped fully into the hallway. He was barefoot, his skin grimy, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. For a split second, we just stared at each other. Then he whispered, hoarse and raspy, "This is my house." I bolted. I slammed my bedroom door shut, locked it, and shoved my dresser against it with every ounce of strength I had. The man's footsteps pounded the hallway. He rattled the knob, slammed against the door once, twice. I screamed into the phone, "He's trying to get in!" The dispatcher told me officers were on their way. The banging stopped. Silence stretched out. I pressed my ear to the door, trembling. And then I heard it, the faint sound of him retreating. Back up the hallway, back toward the attic, the creak of the attic door closing. When the officers arrived, they searched the entire house. At first, they didn't find anything. The attic looked empty, just dust, cobwebs, and old insulation. But then one of them found it. In the far corner of the attic, behind a loose panel of wood, was a small hollow space. Inside were blankets, food wrappers, and a cracked water bottle. Someone had been living up there, watching us. The police said the man must have been squatting in the house before we moved in, using the attic as his shelter. When we bought the place, he didn't leave. He stayed. And for 2 weeks, while I unpacked boxes, while my parents slept, while I walked the halls at night, he was above us, listening, watching. They never found him. By the time the officers arrived, he was gone, vanished into the night like he'd never been there. But I know what I saw. I still see his face when I close my eyes, and sometimes, in the middle of the night, I swear I hear it again. The faint creak of the attic door, opening.